I hear a berry going.
Someone else will need to put that into Mukana, into the thing, the YouTube link. I don't have it on this computer. Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you are in YouTube and watching, you'll see a link down below that you can join. If you are here in Zoom and you'd like to be part of this panel, if you think that you know more than we do, you might. And so we'd love to have you come in. You need to be here by 6:40 when we do the mic checks. If you just want to have good audio, especially if you're just watching, as well as good video and good internet. And so we'd love to have you here. Love to have you part of this panel. A reminder that the first hour is all general questions, and we depend on you to ask those questions in Mukana. So ask those questions, and if you're not asking questions, then vote those questions up. We've been a little short on questions in the last couple of days, and we really depend on you to come up with things that you're trying to figure out. And the best way to do that is to think about them between the shows. So do a little bit before. If there's something that pops up that you just don't understand, write it down somewhere, then bring it in, and we'll discuss it. First hour is general discussion, and then the second hour is usually something specific or a special guest like today. So my good friend Andy Ihnatko will be here in the second hour to just answer your questions, talk about his path, how he got here, and what he looks at in the future. And it's going to be a great conversation, and we're excited to have him here. So you can ask questions. You can tag those in Mukana as second hour if you have things that are specific for Andy. But then otherwise, make sure we have enough general questions. So think up those questions and throw them in there. And I have to go manage a record for a project I'm working on. So I'm going to go disappear for a little while, but I hope to be back before Andy gets started. If I don't, Mickey, keep your eye out for him. He'll be popping into the members. And Bill, I'll have you just keep running with it from there. And then we'll let you guys manage questions and process. But I'll see you guys hopefully in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but possibly by 8. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Fair enough. And so for a couple of questions, well, we're loading up the question queue. So thank you all for doing what is necessary to drive the show. This is an extraordinary opportunity for you. If you've been watching the show for quite a while and you thought, I'm not sure my questions are good enough or whatever, they always are. I find the simplest questions sometimes to generate the best discussions. And it certainly helps pull people who haven't been in this for a long time into the discussion and engages them. So please don't hesitate to ask questions and whatever you feel like learning about. We didn't talk about the show before. If somebody's going to read questions, does anybody want to raise a hand to do that? Or you want me to read them and just go on from there? I guess I'll just take care of them myself. So we're starting with a question from A. Mitchells, who is a frequent questioner here on Office Hours. It was asked by somebody in the earlier chat, but it seems like they didn't get an answer. Has anyone used the cloud save features in Zoom for the text chat? If so, please run through how you do that or how you get that to work. The person earlier was trying to save to Google Drive, I think, but couldn't find the file. Does anybody use that kind of system and have any insights as to how to make that happen? Or is the reason nobody answered it the last time because nobody has figured it out and they don't know how to do it? We're getting no response. Well, there we go. Good. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate your being brave. And then Grant right after you. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, no. That was me going, I don't know. I've never used that. Why would I use that? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trip you up there.
No, that's okay. It's an edge case that we're having. Grant, do you have anything to add to that deep understanding answer?
Yeah. So there is in the cloud recording. I'm just trying to pull it up to remind myself, because it is an option to save the chat to the cloud recording, and so then you find that within your the web portal of Zoom. I'm just looking at something that I know for sure had some text chat in it just to see, but it essentially does it. If you put all of the options on, you turn all of the checkboxes on when you do recording, you can do a transcript as well. Now, I think the transcript may only be on the business plan, maybe even the enterprise plan. So you can get a transcript and you can get the chat, save the chat into the cloud as well. The other setting that you can use is there's a setting in the app itself where you can auto save the chat. And it seems to depend on which meeting and if it's your meeting or someone else's meeting, but it does save, and it'll auto save into your, if you look on Mac and PC, you can look at the documents, so your home folder and then documents, you'll see Zoom, and then you'll see folders if it has been turned on, and you'll see the chat transcript in there.
It seems like a lot simpler than my process. It was just put a cursor in it, and if I find that I can grab it, I feel so lucky that I just copy it and put it on my notepad and try to figure out what to do with it after that. Guy, suggestions?
Yeah, here is the back end and an admin. So you don't get this unless you're in a business plan or an enterprise plan. There is the chat file right there. And then if you open up something with some content, so this is share speaker view, you could see the chat messages down there on the side. So this is only on a business account though that you can do this.
So once again, the tier that you pay for does make a difference in the capabilities you have access to. So yeah, that's part of their business model, I would suppose. All right, I think we pretty much taken care of that as well as we can. Let's move on. TJ Asher has our next question out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Sound people, what type of headphones do you like to use when recording and why? Is it different when recording in the studio or in the field? And there's a note here for monitoring for recording, open ear, over ear. So the form factor of the headphones. We actually had a pretty long discussion of this. Was it yesterday or the day before? I'm having trouble remembering the days. But we had a big talk about the different kinds of cans. We talked about specific models. In that discussion, the overall plus seemed to be for phones like the Sony 7506s, which are not particularly musical in that I think more than a few people said, I don't like to listen to my music on it for hours at a time because they're a little fatiguing, but their plus is that they are both highly efficient. They can put out a lot of level, and they also kind of have a little presence peak in the middle of human speech. So if you're doing work like managing dialogue or listening to content that has a lot of talking in it, they're very good for that. But let's go around the panel and see who else has ideas. Jason, then Courtney, then Chris. Go ahead, Jason.
So I'd say as far as in the field, always closed back, always closed back. If you're mastering semi-opened, I don't generally use open back headphones for anything that has to do with production. That's my personal preference. I just seems like it doesn't work. As far as recording, if you're recording, the flatter the better as far as the response curve. That's the same reason that people use studio monitors, for example. It's not to make the things sound good, it's to make them sound the way that you're recording them.
Yeah, Courtney, and then Chris Fenwick, and then Guy will come back in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Courtney.
concur with you, Bill. These are MDR V6s that are the predecessors to the 7506s, and the nice thing is they fold flat and have a coiled cable, so you're not going to jerk your head off if you walk away from wherever they're plugged in, and you're not going to jerk the wire out of the connector, and that's important. They're over the ear, of course, and if I need to listen to somebody, typically when you're mixing in the field, someone will come up to you and try and talk to you, and so you can just remove one ear for a second, although they do give you some good isolation. And a lot of times I'll listen just on one ear to avoid the problem of when you hear a mono signal coming in both ears and in phase with each other, it tends to sound quite a bit different than it does once you play that sound on a speaker. So it tricks your brain into thinking it sounds, you hear more detail and hear a lot of stuff that you may not hear once you play it back on a speaker. So it kind of tunes you into a lot of that stuff that can be a problem in the edit, but you don't necessarily focus on.
Looks like Chris Fenwick is waving accessories at us. What a wonderful thing.
Courtney, the MDR V6, which is what I'm wearing, is also might be the only pair of headphones with their own wiki page. When Sony first brought them out in the 80s, everybody loved them, especially audio engineers, because they're flat. When they tried to update them, they got kickback from the industry, and they brought this. So they updated them, and then they resurged and brought them back. And you can buy replacement earmuffs for them, because that's the part that tends to wear out the most. You
I'm
get
on
those
about
little
my
black.
6th pair of earmuffs for this.
Yeah, they
Right.
get this flaky, sheddy thing that puts
The
little black
story-
flecks all over your
The
desk.
story of
It's-
the V6 is very interesting, though. You should go read the wiki page.
Yeah, I will also say you can also get really nice. I don't think I can focus on this, but these are the suede pads that are available in aftermarket, and they make wearing these an absolute joy. So Grant and Noah, Chris, then Guy, then Grant. So Guy first. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, popular in the U.S. is the 7506s, and abroad more. I hear that you use what I use is the Sennheiser HMD 25-1-2s, which the difference on some of these is you could spread the headband for comfort, and then you got the swivel ear, so you can actually kick one ear up and be able to hear your environment. And then there's caliper pressure, the adjustment of being able to decide how much you want it to clamp down. And they're totally flat. They have velour head muffs inside. And so when you buy the package, they're already in there and they're super comfortable. So I have both. I have the 7506s, but I mostly find myself reaching for the HMD 25-1-2s when I'm out. They do cost twice as much, though. They're like $200, not just $99.
Why do I think we could have this discussion for about 4 more hours? We're moving on to Grant and then Mixie. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so I've got the Beyerdynamics, the DT 990s. Now they are open back, which I really like in a closed environment like this. And the other thing is they have a nice suede muff on them, and so I've had these for 5 years and no problems with black flakiness. The only trick with these is you do have to watch the impedance. You can get them in all sorts of different impedance, and so I knew that I was going to use them in like, iPhones and like all sorts of just coming straight out of the laptop and things like that. So I got low impedance, but they're a beautiful sound, very, very, very flat, and I like the open sound. You can just wear them all day and they're beautiful. So
Okay, Mickey and then Jeffrey Powers. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a couple of times in the past week, but yeah, I'm MDR 7506s, and in the studio I have a bunch of 7506s and also HD 280s, Sennheiser HD 280s that are for use in the booth for voice sounds and such. But sometimes on the field, on location, I use the Shure SE535, which is it's actually the 3-driver version of these for situations where it's run and gun, because living in a tropical country, having 7506s isn't the most all day long isn't the most comfortable thing. It gets all sweaty and gross. And also in situations where, say, I have to wear a hard hat, having headphones on are a pain. So in-ears are good for that.
Nice. Okay, Jeffrey Powers to finish up.
So to be a drummer, the one thing is that sound, because not only do you have the loud drums playing into mics, but you also have the louder music coming through, so you can hear what's going on. So what I end up doing is, first of all, I try and find anything that will encompass the ear. And of course, ears are different sizes, so you could have a small set of headphones, you could have a big set of cans, but mostly the cans aren't driving the sound in my case. What I will do is I will get a set of earbuds, and I will definitely, I'll try and get them molded as best as possible if I don't have in-ear molds, and I will put those in, and then I'll take the cans and I'll put them right on top to really create that seal. And what that does is that makes sure that there's absolutely no bleed through from the music coming through out into the recordings, because that can, of course, be a killer for a lot of things. And I've also done this with any type of voiceovers. I'll actually use a set of earbuds and then put cans on top of that, so it really kills out the sound.
Yeah. Jeff Francis, go ahead.
Jeffrey, following up to that, shooter's muffs work great for that on top of earbuds. So, ear muffs for shooting. TJ, any follow-up? This was your question, and there's been a lot of talk about it. Any other questions?
Nope. I was just curious as to some people, as I've seen doing their recordings, I see some people with the big giant cans, closed backs, and then I see others with open. So I'm just curious as to why the difference sometimes.
Well, and
Open
we
sounds
had the
better, but it
discussion-
doesn't block out sound.
Yeah, yeah, that's the form factor difference. I think we had in the discussion yesterday, the day before. It just depends on what you're most comfortable with and the kind of stuff you want to do. Some people are very, very particular about low end, and there are headphones that are out there that enhance bass. So if you're going to be listening to music for fun and you're a big hip hop or thump kind of music person, then they're going to make you happier than something that would make me happier as somebody who's looking for detail and wants to assess whether somebody's popping P's or splashing their S's. That's kind of a different thing to listen for. Go ahead, Jeff.
So Sunday I was doing a classical live stream. So I'm in a booth in the back running cameras and microphones, and I can hear sound from the stage. So listening on open ear headphones was impossible. So I had the Sony 7506s to listen to my mix. But then if I wanted to listen to the stream, which was seconds delayed, I actually popped in my AirPod Pros with the noise cancellation on it to listen to, what the person at home is listening to 12 seconds later. So that was another headphone option.
That's an interesting mental exercise, because as somebody who did stadium announcing at one point, when there's a delay between what you're saying and what's coming back to you, it can shut your brain down real fast. It's a definite skill to be able to talk and listen to yourself back with a delay. All right, I think we've pretty much knocked that one around the ballpark enough. So let's move to Paul King's question from Northern Virginia. What's the group's preferred brand for longer Ethernet cables? And he specifies 50 to 100 foot. Go ahead, TJ, Asher, and then Jason. Go ahead, TJ.
Monoprice, monoprice, monoprice.
And Jason Bache, and then Grant after that.
Well, you read my mind, so I'm going to give you another one. If you're going to make your own, Ubiquity's cable is both indoor and outdoor rating. My one problem with Monoprice is that they only make one cable that's actually properly outdoor rated and properly fire rated and UV fade, and all of that stuff. So if you're going to make your own, by all means, Ubiquity makes a fantastic Cat 6.
Okay, Grant, and then Jeff Francis.
I was just doing a one-up for Monoprice.
Oh, okay. Then Jeff Francis, and then Mickey after that. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm on a one-up for Make Your Own.
Mickey?
I guess I'm the odd one out. I'd go for Belden cables.
Okay. Well, another fine brand that's been out there for a long, long time. And so, at the top end of the reference list of quality cables, I think the brand's probably close to the top. Would all do a fine job, but you're hearing some of the little details in there. So let's move on to the next question. Mike Burns of Spokane, Washington asks, looking to do live events with an atem-mini and a Rodcaster Pro. What are some good cameras to use without breaking the bank? The budget for him is around $1,000 US. Does anybody have suggestions on $1,000 cameras to use? Jason.
You can't balance them, but the Sony FDR AX53 is a fantastic camera as long as you don't need to do sound. If you need to do sound, there's an extra part that Sony doesn't make anymore that you can find on eBay that'll give you straight, clean XLR in. And but that's going to put you way over your limit because it costs about as much as the camera. That said, the AX53 is a fantastic camera. It'll give you 4K. It's stabilized. And so you can actually record in 4K and output to your atem-mini in 1080.
Yeah, does anybody have any experience? Because, we had brands for a long time like JVC and Panasonic that had a lot of models in that kind of mid-range. They sold them into the education market for schools that were teaching camera operation and broadcast, even down to elementary and grade schools. So they weren't tremendously expensive. But I've been out of that market for such a long time. I don't know about. Let's Jeffrey and then Mickey. Go ahead, Jeffrey Powers.
If you need an optical zoom, then lower end Sonys that Jason was talking about, the $200-300 models are going to have some of them will have clean feed, some of them won't. Canon, a lot of Canons, in fact, Twit uses Canon cameras last time I saw. And by this way, you can actually buy 2 or 3 or 4 for under $1,000. One other thing is go online, find some used GoPro Hero 4s. I've been using them for me. If you don't need to worry about optical zoom, the GoPro Hero 4s work perfect for that. And then of course the Mocos that some of the panel is using, if you get a good lens with it, that works really well as well.
Yeah. Okay,
so
Mickey, then Jason. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a quick question since Mike's in the panel. What define live events? What are you doing? Because that would heavily decide what camera people should be suggesting.
Yeah, so Mickey, it could vary. It could be anywhere from inside a restaurant to maybe inside a church type environment. I'm thinking probably fixed cameras. I don't think I'm going to get too involved in zooming, while we're shooting. But I used to have a couple Vixias, a Vixia VHS 200. I had, and then also I do have a GH7. But I'm thinking, because I know you guys talk about sometimes PTZ cameras, sometimes even security cameras that you're running off of Ethernet. So if you're doing long cable runs, I know you're limited with HDMI regarding that. And I am a complete idiot when it comes to doing live remote stuff. I'm used to just doing kind of like small one-man band stuff. So anyway.
Okay, Jason, then Roscoe, then Jeff. Go ahead, Jason.
I just had a follow-up on the GoPros. I mean, everybody knows that GoPros are an extremely wide camera, and you're going to be limited even more so than your normal limitations. And somebody else back me up on this, but you're going to be even more limited on your cable runs for the GoPro output. And somewhat more importantly, the Hero 4s can get a little bit goofy. And unless, of course, you absolutely turn down, do not do 60p. You're going to make your GoPro crazy.
Yeah, most of the GoPros that I've had experience with have tighter shots, but it's usually a crop of the sensor, a push in electronically. So you're going to lose a little bit of resolution if you try to make that a medium shot rather than the wide that the camera is designed to do, the sports camera, super wide. So it was Roscoe and then Jeff and then Grant.
Mike, are you looking at $1,000 for multiple cameras or per camera? So what is?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, maybe taking on maybe additional 1 or 2 cameras, within that budget.
For $1,000. Yeah, then you're looking at Vixias, anything that has a clean HDMI output. But I would get a non-fixed lens. Make sure there's some sort of zoom lens on the front of it. Even an old HV40 is not a bad camera, depending on how much lighting you have and that kind of stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the used market I'd go for. And don't limit your HDMI cables. They can go up to 100 feet. Go to monoprice and make sure it is red mirror. And the only thing about those cables, they only run in one direction. But I would start buying a kit looking towards your atem-mini. I would start looking towards building it out.
So
yeah, these going to be. Oh, go ahead.
Would you say monoprice red mirror? Is that a factory or a brand?
No, well, when you get to the 100-foot lengths in monoprice, they will cost a little bit more, but they will have this red mirror chip in it, which is basically turns them into fiber optic HDMI cables.
Oh, great. Thank you, Roscoe. That's great.
Okay, Jeff, then Grant, then Chris. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Mike, this is kind of exactly the setup that I had on Sunday. It was atem-mini Pro. It was 4 different Canon camcorders, GH20, XA10, XA40, XA50. So those are a range of the GH20 is when it came out was probably $600, maybe a little less. And 2 of those were running through 100-foot HDMI cables. Those are ones I got from Amazon. I'll put a link to those in the chat.
Grant and Chris Comfort. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was just going to add about the GoPro as well. So this is a Hero 3 that you're looking at there, and yep, super wide. But in like a restaurant you spoke about, I think these are an awesome safety shot. They're a great establishment shot. And so, but you've always got something to come back to. And so I throw it on most of those live streams. It's right there at my control desk. I can have a short cable on it, and it's just a safety wide shot, and gives people a good idea of, how many people are there or whatever. So the wide shot is a really a good asset in those live streams, I find.
Yeah, I'm going to support what he said. That's my wide shot, and it's my go-to if I don't have anything else to show anybody. You always can come to the back, and people watch that for a while. We have Chris Comfort.
Yeah, Mike, one thing to be aware of, I'm on Phil, let me borrow his Sony FDR AX100, which is a little above your price range. It's an amazing camera, clean HDMI out, as you can see, and it works great until you hit the record button. And then the HDMI goes black. So you want to make sure that whatever camera you get, if you are recording through HDMI, either record through the HDMI or on the camera, but you can't do both. So
see, those are the kind of things why we say test everything.
Yeah.
Set it up, run it, test it. That's
if
the worst
you're only,
kind of.
And I don't think it outputs in 4K. I think it's like 1080p or 1080i or something. So.
We've got more people in. So Chris Fenwick and then Jason Bates. Go, Chris.
Mr. Comfort, concerning your, and it goes to black. I always say there's a couple words that really bother me in this industry. One of them is shouldn't. Well, it shouldn't do that. And any feature in any device, there's a number of reasons why somebody thought it should. And so you really absolutely have to test everything. Yeah. Never say shouldn't. The other one I don't like in post-production is the word just. Well, can't we just? Can't we just?
Did I say
Chris
should?
Fenwick
I apologize.
No, you didn't. But that's why, when you're designing a system or building something out, it's really easy to go, oh, that shouldn't be a problem. Well, it usually is when you say that.
Jason's going to weigh in, then Courtney, and then I think we'll move on. Jason?
Yeah, the kill me phrase in IT is there any way to? You're not asking, is there any way to? You're asking, can I do this without blowing anything up? Which is not the same question. Anyway, just
including
a quick,
budget.
Yeah, including the budget. But no, just a quick anecdote. The AX53 does have a firmware update, and I have done recording. I don't know if I've done 4K recording now that you mention it, but I've done simultaneous 1080p recording and clean HDMI output.
Fair enough. Courtney, to wrap things up. Oh, Jeffrey Powers is in too, so let's do Courtney then Jeffrey.
Just one thing to mention, if you're going to repurpose an old camcorder or something, which a lot of them work actually very, very well if they have an HDMI out, but you have to be careful about timeout, because a lot of them, anything with moving tape drives will time out after, if you're not rolling, if you're not recording, it'll shut itself off after 7 minutes or so. Some of them have the ability to turn that off. Even some, solid state recorders, especially if they have an internal hard drive, spinning hard drive, they will time out and shut down, even if they're AC powered. So you got to look for that and try it out and let it run with an output for more than 10 minutes or so and make sure it doesn't shut itself off.
Yeah, you can with a tape drive camera, and if you leave it in pause mode for too long, that head's going to spin against old tape and it's going to fry your head, and you'll have deep trouble after that. Jeffrey Powers, go ahead.
Yeah, lots of different options here, and that's great. And you can definitely do a $4,000. Really quick on Chris's comment on the FDR. I'm running through the AX700. A lot of people are saying it's a little blurry. That's because of the internet connection right now, where I'm still having some problems. But the whole point with his, because I have that same problem, there's also a setting inside that will turn off the camera to send the signal through the HDMI, or turn off the screen to send the signal through the HDMI. You just have to look for that, and maybe that's through that firmware update that Jason talked about.
Okay, I think we've knocked this one around for a while. Let's move on. We're going to switch to Alex Goldner, who's here in the panel today from London. Do you think there's a future for collaborative real-time video editing in the browser? Now, Alex, explain a little bit about what you mean by in the browser.
Well, there's this new thing that's just got funded called scenery.video, and they literally are there. If you go to scenery.video as the website, they're showing 3 or 4 people accessing the same timeline, moving clips around, having different playheads, stuff like that. And they've got funding from venture capitalists to say, yeah, and we'll do this in the browser. So the idea is that you and your teammates and clients and who knows who else will have access to the same timeline and be working together. So does anyone believe in this, or it's like a kind of crazy? It's quite anyway. So what do people think?
That's one of those questions to me. Like, if it takes one woman 9 months to have a baby, how long does it take 6 women? At some point, I understand a lot of people wanting to get their hands in and touch a timeline, but the more you diversify the creative decisions in one piece of work, it's like painting with a team. There's a lot of sides to this, so we're going to have a long discussion about this, I bet. Let's start with Roscoe, go to Chris, and then Courtney.
Oh, this comes out of pre-COVID because in my editing lab, we start with watching a video, and there's 5 or 6 kids around a screen watching this video. Then we sit them down. There's 4. They can distribute themselves out amongst 4 computers. Sometimes they like to work in groups of 3, sometimes 2, and sometimes 1. But you'll find that group of 3 will soon get very frustrated with each other. Now, these are new to editing, so granted, they don't understand all the if and ands and buts, but no, it is a 1-person operation, maybe a 2-person operation. I just can't see 3, 4, or 5 being of any use whatsoever to me.
Yeah. Courtney?
As far as collaboration goes, it might work if, it locks out when one person has the comm, the other people can't really change anything until they give up the comm. And of course, in a cloud editing situation, all of your media has to be uploaded into the cloud server so that it can handle it in a reasonable amount of time. And I guess the cloud editor and cloud server is only sending out, compressed proxies to show people the cut on the fly. And in that little demo, it showed just moving blocks around, so you weren't seeing thumbnails. But maybe that's just a demo. That maybe that's just a representation of how it works and not how it really works. And as far as collaboration goes, yeah, I think it's going to be a dumpster fire with 4 or 5 creative people trying to access the timeline at the same time. You might be able to hand it off to one person to do a cut and then another person to do a cut, but it's going to have a complex journaling system to be able to undo what other people have done in case you go, no, that was a bad idea.
And thankfully, here in the panel, we have at least one full-time professional editor, Chris Fenwick. Dive in.
So here's what I would say about this. There was a day when people thought flying was magical and impossible, and now we do it every day. So there are plenty of examples of like Google Docs and sharing documents online. Why not video? I think it's not simple. I think it'll be hard, but if you say like, hey, I want you to work on that thing at that end of the timeline, and I'm going to work on this, and it's some sort of, magnetic-y timeline, I absolutely welcome this. It will be hard, and it may not be my generation that excels at it. It might be my grandson, but it'll happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. My 2 cents on it as somebody who edits a lot. I mean, that's probably 75% of my income every year. I'm the decision-making piece, and I work a lot before COVID with 3 or 4 people behind me, typically an art director, the producer of the project, other voices that are going to be informing what I do so that we get the project down the right path to take care of what the client needs, because that's their responsibility. As the editor in the seat, I am making constant decisions. And it's a possibility. It's a process for me of saying, when do I say, no, that's not a good idea? When do I try to work real hard to get them what they think they want? And do I have the understanding of what they want in relation to where the project needs to go to say, yeah, we can do this, but it's going to mess up some other things, and it's going to take the project in a different direction. That dance of stakeholders, which is the common term nowadays in corporate speak, is going to get nothing but more complex, I think. And I've come to the point where I really like it when somebody gives me a good brief about what they want to get accomplished. Let me do what I do, what I've spent 15 years learning how to do, then assess it. Let's all get together and talk about it. And then maybe at that point, when people have added their ideas that'll help me make it better, maybe at that point, there's a point where we open it up to more people touching it. But I'm a little leery because you touch it too much and you work it to death before you've gotten the shape of it. That's my 2 cents. Roscoe, oh look, Chris, let's go back to Chris because Chris is
yeah.
the editor,
I'll also say,
go
and somebody might want to write down this time code 7:28 a.m. John Edelson. I'll also say that companies like Zoom could already be doing this. And I think that there's a lot to be said about a Zoom cloud-based editor. Zoom is generating more media than anybody probably right now, except for possibly YouTube. And they're gathering it in. People are hitting record all over. And there's no reason why, given all of the technology they have available, that they couldn't make a cloud-based collaborative edit system. And I would love to help them design it.
Fascinating. Roscoe and then Mike Burns. Roscoe,
yeah, I mean, if we're just talking assembly edit, sure, you can have a lot of people putting it together if everyone knows. My closest example is going to be network television. Most weekly series have 3 editors. That's just because of the amount of work they can get done. Those 3 editors are responsible mostly to the showrunner. They have to have a certain look that, you know, a show develops a certain look, and they don't want, the editors themselves can tell you, oh, I can look at, you know, one scene and tell you exactly which of the 3 editors cut it, because they do have their style, but it is so hidden underneath that the showrunner does not want, oh, suddenly, you know, this show goes off the rails a little bit here because of what the editor did. That's just not allowed. But those 3 people do replace each other all the time. So, you know, someone will say, hey, can you just do the scene after the last commercial break or for me? And they'll do that all the time, interchange. But there is one person whose name goes on that show as edited by.
Yeah, Mike Burns and then TJ Asher. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I mean, it looks, first of all, that graphical interface looked like the early days of Pong to me, but I could see where you know, you could do maybe like an offline edit or a rough cut edit. I know a lot of reality shows are having story editors doing like very easy kind of rough cuts, if you will, and then they'll hand it off the editor. So I could see something like that being done, almost like the way Simon Says was being used, you know, where we're going to pick a sound, we're going to put soundbite here, and then you start stacking them. You start loosely putting together the storyline of what the edit is going to be or what the episode's going to be, then hand it off to an editor to then polish and sweeten and do all that good stuff.
Okay, Mike, and just to note, you're coming in about 3 dB down. TJ Asher, go ahead.
To Chris's point, Guy was mentioning earlier this week or last week, he was doing some experimentation with somebody and they were remote controlling his computer, doing editing at his computer over Zoom.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be more and more easier and easier to accomplish as the technology of this. I also agree with Chris very much that there are different kinds of edits. I mean, if you're working on a narrative film, that is a different creative enterprise for the editor than if you're building business videos to a structure and that they need to conform to education norms. So there are certain types of work that probably 3 different editors could touch 3 different parts of it and have them pretty much all come out the same, in the same way that documents in a corporation that are following a corporate style sheet are expected to all look very similar, even though they might be touched by different designers. So I think that'll go in, but we're never going to lose that, oh my gosh, Wes Anderson has a look and he and his editors are really working hard to preserve what makes a film a Wes Anderson film. I think that's always going to be maintained as well. Oh, Alex, you want to top in before we go to the next one? Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, so there's also other kinds of collaboration which may be somewhat relevant. So you could actually have the showrunner could have access to all the scenes, but wouldn't necessarily be able to edit an individual scene, but could change the order of a scene or choose a bit from a scene and actually be doing that while those scenes are actually still being edited by the editors. So you can look at it from a kind of hierarchy point of view. So you could have people distributed across the hierarchy lower down, and then have one person above them doing something like balancing the reels or where to put the intermission in. And then you've got collaborators. So you could have other people adding graphics in here and there, or doing stuff to do with sound or and that can actually be happening at the same time, strangely enough. I think the important thing is to have a trail of modifications. So you have to be able to have a trail to know who changed what and when, and to be able to go back at any stage to whatever you want. And so Final Cut's quite good for that, because you could actually have somebody edit a scene, and that becomes a version of the scene, but you'll be able to easily go back to the previous scene using a bit of UI to say, okay, show me the previous scene so I can see what changes this person made. And then I'd be able to pick one of those two scenes and to say, okay, well, let's commit that one, but keep the other one just in case you want to go back to some of the ideas from it. So I think it's interesting. But why in the browser? I think that's just fashion, and I guess that's how they raise their money, because if it's in the cloud, they make money that way. I think the browser aspect of it is a bit silly at the moment.
Okay. Well, I think we've had a good discussion about that. I think we know this is being driven by all the changes that are happening in terms of, I think work from home pushed this real strong. What Zoom is doing is showing people new possibilities. We are doing remote and distributed work in teams like never before. So it doesn't surprise me that people are talking about this, and this will be developing a lot over the next 3 or 5 years, I believe. Let's move on. Rick Coombs of Columbia, Tennessee says, I have been an Android user forever, but I'm thinking of making the switch to Apple for my phone. I'm not really new to Apple. Can anyone make the case why I should go ahead and switch to Apple over Android? By the way, I use the Pixie phone. So Jason Bass and then Grant.
I'm going to assume he means the Pixel phone. I have and maintain a Pixel 3, and here's the most compelling, succinct use case I can think of. I go way deep into Android and, turn off everything that I can think of, and then connect to a completely dedicated Wi-Fi address and log the DNS traffic when the phone's just hanging out. There's a lot of it, and there shouldn't be.
Yeah, let's not get into the Apple thing, just at Apple versus Facebook from today. Let's go on to Grant and then Jeffrey.
I was going to comment that I thought we didn't talk about religion on this show, because when we start to compare Apple and Android, you get kind of the extremes. I've been a Apple fanboy for as long as I could purchase it. But my biggest thing is I think that a big strength of Apple is it's as much as what they say no to as what they say yes to. So I feel like in all their menu options and their different features, I think they spend a lot of time saying no, and no, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. And you can see that as restrictive, or you can see it as actually streamlining it and focusing on what is important. And so I feel like I often come across people with Android, and particularly more geeky people that love getting into all those extra options and features and things. But often people get to a point where it's not working properly because of all these extra things that are slowing it down. It seems to be more of a consistent experience, I find, on Apple, and so. And another thing is that the whole App Store environment seems to be that the app developers release on iOS first. Consistently seems to be it comes to iOS before it goes to the Play Store.
Jeffrey?
Grant, that's true. But if you ever visit any place in Asia, which I know you have, there's a lot of companies that do Android before they do iOS. So where I'm going to go with it is for the musician and the videographer, because even though all these new cameras, and they probably have better cameras than the iPhone does in all reality, but the one problem that they have with their cameras is the streaming ability. And a perfect example is if you ever do a Facebook stream on an Android device. If you lose your stream, you lose everything. Whereas on an iOS, it's always saving the video to the phone to eventually push back out into Facebook, so you don't have an interrupted feed. So it doesn't lose packets like Android will do it. For a musician on that side, it's just superior of what you can connect up to an iOS device over an Android device. In fact, there's been so many companies that have started developing Android versions of their iOS apps for music. Like, for instance, IK Multimedia and Bias and a couple of the other companies that they started their Android devices and then they just decided to nix them because it was just the mark was all over the place because of different types of hardware that they had to end up supporting. So those are the two main reasons why I have an iPhone over an Android.
Okay, we're gonna pace it up just a little bit. And I'm gonna go to TJ and Mike real quick, and let's do Mike first and then TJ after that. But try to keep it 30 seconds, and we're gonna start accelerating because we still got 8 questions after this list is over. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so I'm going to be super quick. I had a second career at Apple after having some health issues and worked there almost 5 years. And I have to say, like, support. If your parents are retired and in their 60s and they've never touched a computer, they are going to get way more help and support in the Apple Store when they buy their first laptop, their first iPad, their iPhone, than they are from buying a Samsung at Best Buy or the kiosk in the mall. It's like, where do you go when you need help, when you have questions, when it breaks? And that's all I got to say. Mic drop.
Okay, TJ?
They're tools, just like Makita, DeWalt, Milwaukee. If one has the features and functionality that you want and the other one is lacking it, you get the one that has the features and functionality that you want. Simple.
Sounds like a good way to wrap this up. We're moving on to Christian Ortiz's question from South Florida. What is the recommended way to test and tweak one's audio and video before joining a live panel? Gee, it'd be interesting if some big show like this did mic checks every single day and went through all of this stuff. Jeff Francis, what do you think?
2 things. One, you can record yourself. I use every morning QuickTime, and I just make a new movie and I can see my camera and I can record some audio and listen back to it. You can do that right in Zoom. You can record in your own meeting. And the other thing is get a buddy. If you're going to get on a panel, find another person and you can critique each other before you jump on that panel. Because it's great to have another set of eyes and ears looking and listening to hear you on the other end.
Which is a perfect lead into our Discord very quickly, a little promo for that. If you want to find a buddy who deals with this sort of stuff, we have a Discord that's growing by leaps and bounds. I think there are 700-800 people there now who do this chat 24/7, and it's really good place to find people who think about these things. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, just so you know that there is a little test link that you can get into Zoom. So zoom.us/test, and that will just open a meeting. And so you're in a meeting then, and so you can kind of play around a little bit. You're actually in a meeting. The other thing I would do a little bit is a cloud recording is a great way too, because it's actually going to the server. And so I think you probably do need a pro. You can do it with a pro account, and you just do a quick cloud recording and then go and actually listen to yourself back, and you don't need anyone, and you can listen to yourself. That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, unless I'm late, I do that every day. I have, I think, a minimal account with Zoom, but if I get in here early and I think, has the lighting right, did I get the background right, I'll just toss up and spend 3 minutes in my own private little meeting just looking at how things are set up for that day. Chris Fenwick, go ahead.
I would love 741. I would love a way that when you log into a meeting that you as a host could define a PNG that you could draw yourself, that you could draw like, this is where I would like your face to be, and this is where I'd like your shoulders to be, and I'd like to, we're going to put some graphics here, and you can like line up your camera shot or have your people line up their camera shot
like
and
a
go,
passport
oh, okay.
photo. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like a passport photo. And then once they've had a chance to look at that, they can actually, enter the meeting, or you can let them in or whatever. I just think that'd be a cool feature, Zoom.
Okay, I think we've covered this. Let's move on to Alton Christensen out of Brooklyn, who asks, is a 1/4-20 tripod screw thread the same as an M6 metric thread? Are they truly interchangeable? My suspicion is maybe no, but I don't know for a fact. TJ, have you had any experience trying to put one
No.
into the other?
They are not the same. They are very close, not the same.
So it's not a matter of adding more force or torque to the insertion of said screw into said socket. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, they're only interchangeable if you want to forcefully rethread all your gear and then, have it rip out on you. No, don't do that.
So it's just a mini tap and die test. That's all. That's all that is. Okay, so I think that's your answer is no, not a good idea. Brody Hefner of New York City comes in with, for the benefit of the less technically knowledgeable, please explain what we should understand about analog to digital AD conversion in the audio chain, and specifically how this applies to mics that connect via 3.5 millimeter plug or USB or an XLR connector. So who wants, so good, excellent. Jeff is going to take us through the A to D, and so is Mickey and Jason. Go, Jeff.
So most sound is all analog. Most microphones are analog. When we get to the internet, we got to be digital. So we have to convert from analog to digital at some point. A USB mic will do that inside the mic because USB is a digital transmission. XLRs and 3.5 millimeter need to go into a mic preamp. That mic preamp will raise that very small electricity up to a larger electricity, and then that will get into a to D converter somewhere. If you're using something like a Polson or a Pile and you're going either into a Tech Rise or you're going into atem-mini Pro, that's the device that is doing the A to D conversion. If you're using an XLR mic, you could be going into an analog mixer or a digital mixer. Either way, the mic preamp part of that is analog and it's got to convert to digital at some point. If it's a digital mixer, it'll have an analog to digital converter, and then you have a USB out of that. If it's an analog mixer, you need to get into some kind of audio interface that's going to have the analog to digital conversion.
Beautiful. Mickey and then Jason.
Jeff covered it.
Yeah, I think I was wondering how you going to add to that, but Jason has a thought. So good.
Okay, the only thing I'll add to that is unless you are spending a fantastic amount of money, if it's not USB, it's analog. That's it.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Well done, Jeff. I think people who are listening will understand now some of the complexities of those two things. We're moving on to Hasmukh from here in the panel, our friend from Cape Town, South Africa. In Zoom, we are now on 1080p. Guy, what does the DVE Store attendee add to the meeting?
Yeah, so in the back end, you guys as attendees can't see it, but since Hasmukh is a panelist, he can see this little DVE Store company. Actually, I could probably start the video and now attendees can see it. It's got the one with the color bars. But basically what it allows me to do is, previously we used the Zoom room to up this meeting to 720p when we had a 360p account. But now what I want to do is have the ability to pin people. And what this allows me to do is kind of spool people up. So I could pin Bill, and now he doesn't go into low resolution mode throughout the meeting. I can just pin him, and now he'll be in 1080p the whole time. So if he checks his stats, he'll be constantly pulled on at 1080p. So that's one of the things I do is I'll go around the meeting. If I know somebody's going to be talking for a while, I'll pre-pin them if I see their hands up. And so that's how I'm using it, is to pre-pin people and to just demo if somebody wants to know something about a Zoom room, like these room controls that we can do, what are the settings. I just have it at the ready instead of having to log it in. So that's the reason.
Which is giving our audience a little bit of a peek behind the scenes of how many people in this panel and quietly behind the scenes are working very hard to try to make this the best experience that we can for everybody who watches it. And that plus things like the mic checks and Alex's overall push to make this a quality show, and that's been there since day one, how that's turned into what we seemingly make easy. Sometimes it's a lot of people doing a lot of extra little touch points to make it good for someone who's watching it, which is, I think, maybe a good description of all good presentations and good shows since the beginning of time. People have worked to try to make it better and better until they have. Okay, moving on to another question from Hasmukh in Cape Town. There seems to be a tussle, maybe a war, between the WLM meters and the YouLean Loudness meters. What gives? Is this a tech battle royale? Does somebody want to explain? Mickey, do you want to dive into why you set up WLM the way you have, and then I don't know who's feeding the YouLean meters, but we'll do that afterwards. Mickey?
Yeah, I forgot who. I think it was Roscoe that mentioned a couple of days ago that it would be nice to have the histogram that is available on the YouLean meter available to the panel, so you can see like where we're getting too loud, too quiet. And so I had some free time this afternoon, installed it, and it's running. It seems to be quite a CPU hog for just a simple meter. It's very inefficiently written. So I don't think I would ever use it on actual work, but for this, hey, why not?
Nice. So that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Even off program, some of the very, very smart and highly experienced people here are kind of tuning up little pieces. They're trying something. Does it improve or does it not improve, and why? Mike Burns, then Roscoe, real quick.
Yeah. So Mickey, are there any like cheap meters that we could use to try to like dial in our audio before we start on the show, so we're pretty close to where we need to be, that are outside of WLM, because they're pretty
the version of YouLean that I'm running is the free version, and it's doing okay. I mean, there are some features that aren't available in the free version, but for what we're doing here, it'll do just fine.
Roscoe, if you're injecting that into the panel, or if you found it, tell us why.
Oh, that was my point. It's free. And so all you need is audio hijack in my case. You run it in audio hijack, but the price is free.
There you go. The price that no one can beat. Moving on to Nick. Oh, I'm sorry. Courtney, you had one more thing real quick. I've already.
Just one question. Is it cross-platform? Since you have to run it in audio hijack, I assume Windows.
It's cross-platform. It's just I'm running it in audio hijack.
Oh, I see. Okay. And in Windows, is it a plugin for?
There are VSTs. There's a VST version, so
you'd have to be running something that has plugins in it.
Okay. Jeff, is it important point? Go ahead and make it. I've already clicked to the next question. So
real quick, if you have nothing else, open up your Zoom audio settings and shoot for 7 of the bars in the little LED meter there.
Okay. Nick Pavlinik is next from Southeast Michigan. I need to upgrade from Comcast modem router, a Comcast modem router to a router that has more control. Which company would you suggest? And I need to keep it under $200, hopefully $150. That's US. 1,500 square foot ranch. Many Internet of Things lights and devices will be hung on this system. Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, I think before we jump into answering the question, like it's important to differentiate what a modem is versus what a router is versus what an access point is. I know a lot of us use devices that are all in one, but when you're asking about a modem / router, that doesn't really and the answer to that that device wouldn't really fix the issue of covering a 1,500 square foot ranch.
Okay. Jason, do you want to amplify? And then we'll go to Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, sure. So the Comcast monolith that you have is 3 things. It's a gateway or a modem. It's a router, which means it gives you an internal and external list of IP addresses, and it does NAT traversal, and then a wireless access point, which is the thing that allows the same thing to be done over Ethernet over Wi-Fi. The right way to do this is going to cost you slightly more than $200. In my humble opinion, it's a Netgear CM1000. That's DOCSIS 3.1 capable. It works on Comcast, and probably a single Eero Pro, which will cost you around $200. So that's roughly twice as much, but hey, it's the best.
Okay. And Jeffrey Powers, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm going to weigh in on the DOCSIS part. You have DOCSIS 3.0 and you have DOCSIS 3.1. If your internet is not going above 400 megabits per second, you probably won't even know what DOCSIS 3.1 is going to do for you. But if you're going to be doing the synchronous download and upload of over 400 megabits per second, then you'll probably want to get something DOCSIS 3.1 or better. And I've been dealing with this because of my internet issues that I've had for the last couple of days. So it's really on what type of internet that you're having fed into the place that you're going to, where the modem would go, and definitely have your router separate from your modem.
So it starts, I think what I'm hearing is that it starts with knowing how much bandwidth your pipe is delivering, your ISP who you signed up with, what they're delivering to your house or office, if that's what you're doing, and then not overbuying. So you're buying some hugely giant sprinkler hose at the end to attach to a little tiny outlet that's not going to be giving you very much. Courtney, you want to make a last comment before we move on?
Yeah, just one comment, because they mentioned the size of the ranch and the IoT lights and devices is that a lot, if not all, most IoT devices are only run at 2.4 gigahertz. So even if you get a good router that has dual frequency, 5 and 2.4, you're going to have to run most everything on 2.4 to get coverage to control those IoT things. So make sure you have a router or maybe multiple access points and a mesh network to cover that big an area at 2.4.
Okay. Moving on, Hasmuk is back with another one from Cape Town. Mickey, you are very fond of the Shure SM58. Would you use it in office hours? I'm going to guess Mickey's going to say sure. Why not?
Sure. Yeah, sure. SHURE.
The SM58 is one of the longest running mic designs, I think, that's out there. It and its brother or sister, the SM57, which is the same capsule without the little I'm going to scream rock music into it ball breath pop filter. Those have been around forever, and the reason they're around forever is they last forever, and they're really good sounding mic for what they do. It was a great design. It stood the test of time. So I think we're moving on. Paul King is up next with from Northern Virginia. Has anyone dealt with the 2020 MacBook Air built-in camera? Online forums reporting that the quality is very poor, looking to replace an earlier model and need to use the built-in cam for one-off video meetings. Chris Fenwick and Jason Bass are both raising their hands. So Chris, you start.
I dutifully listened to the question, and now I'm going to talk about something totally different. I will say that the Logitech Brio is currently in stock on Amazon.
Okay.
Not for long. Thanks, Fenwick.
There you go. But that's like a red alert. That's like attention Kmart shoppers. There's a blue light special. So let's see. We're moving on to Jason. Go ahead, Jason.
Long story short, please do not buy a new MacBook just for the negligible difference in the way that AI can reduce noise and pretend that your thing is HDR. You're still getting 720p. It's still, a photodiode with like, a throw and a reach in a lens that's going to be like, less than 7 millimeters. So come on, don't, if you want it, buy it, but don't buy it because of the camera.
Okay, and I'm just going to take a note here. So we are expecting, and I'm not absolutely sure, but Alex to pop in here at the top of the hour. We're 5 minutes away from that with his guest, Andy Ihnatko. I don't know how to pronounce Andy's last name correctly, and that's my failure, sorry. But someone who has been working with Alex and is a luminary in the world of online presence and talking about these kind of tech things and doing exactly kind of what we do with Leo Laporte and others. So if you have questions that you've been dying to ask Andy over the course of time, then maybe put Andy in front of it and populate some questions of those. We only have three more general questions in our queue because we were expecting that for our second hour. So, Alex is back. So Alex can give us some intelligence on what's going on here.
Sorry, what is I literally just caught the last little bit of that.
I held off we have two more regular questions, which I thought would get us close to the top of the hour. Actually, we have four now, or two more. And then I didn't know whether Andy, he hasn't been in the panel yet. So I wanted to make sure that you knew or that we knew what was going on for the top of the hour changeover. We do still have two more regular questions.
All right, go ahead and ask those questions and
perfect. Okay, so we are moving to Jake Hamilton, and Jake Hamilton of North Hollywood asks, anyone on the panel using Frame.io, how long did it take to learn? Is there a better resource than the tutorials on their YouTube channel? And I can raise my hand for that one. I've been with Frame.io for probably 5-6 years now. What it does, no one else does anywhere nearly as well. And there are a couple of features that keep me a very loyal Frame.io user. It is basically a content hosting service that has a couple of things that are really, really spectacular. Number one is the ability to collaboratively notate a video that you put up into Frame.io in a very powerful way. So if you have a lot of stakeholders all around the world, they can touch your video on Frame.io, leave, and we've seen this more and more in the last few years, but when they did it originally, it was amazing. Notes tied to the time code in the actual video. So you could click on a note, go exactly to where it was, and see what the person leaving you the note said about it. The other thing that I think is their killer feature is they invested a huge amount of, I think it was their second round of financing in security measures. So it's walled garden approach, which means that unless you are allowed into these video content pieces on Frame.io, they are walled off with high security, which means that if you're working on something for a corporate client who has, or a government client or any other kind of client, and they say, nobody can see this until we get finished building it, they're extraordinary at that security function. And the last thing, because they just came out with this not too long ago, is they have the clever people at Frame came up with a system of distribution large content for files where they do a little thing like BitTorrenting. What they do is take your video file or your folder of videos, which I find hugely useful, break it into multiple torrent streams, all of them encrypted, send them across, and by doing that, saturate whatever bandwidth you have, and then reassemble the file when it gets to your side. So large files, and I've sent files up to close to 1 terabyte, and I've done it incredibly quickly because I have a fast modem. And so
I just did a terabyte yesterday. So
yeah, it's like, wow, how fast did that get up there? So it makes possible collaborating with big files in ways that it's never been before. That's
one of the
transfer service.
Yeah, the transfer service is great. The we went from, in the last project, I think that I looked at Frame.io for a long time as a we just review files. Like we just, that's how we review files. We send them to a client to review the file and manage it. The great thing is being able to tie into whatever editing package that you have. So the comments come back in as markers, and that you can just see, you don't have to be looking at a list to figure out what's going on. If you set it up correctly, which I haven't in the past at times, but generally, if you set it up correctly, you can have the markers roll back in as you work. The thing that we kind of move to is just, I'm moving whole projects into it. So for that project, it's month to month, so you can turn it up and down. So I have a project right now, and I think I just got 6.5 terabytes that I just said, I just want 6.5 terabytes, in the web. And if I need more, you know what I'll do? In 10 minutes, I'll have 8 or 10, whatever I need. I'm just going to throw it all up there. And I'm not trying to figure out like what I'm putting up, what I'm not. I just need all the files in one place. Like, this is the resource. This is the RAID that I'm using for the whole team. And all the stuff goes up there. And then we can very smartly or intelligently carve out inside of that space what we're going to show to the client for review, and it's all in the same place, and it's all, I don't have to think about it. And we all have a place to go. Go ahead, Chris.
One of the great features is that when you put your files up there, Frame is constantly making proxies. So as an editor, if say your client is putting up very large files, I can actually just download the proxies. However, it doesn't work on BRAW files.
Oh, there's that. So
there's that.
We'll make a request. Sorry, Chris. Not that Chris is bitter. So the and the funny thing about that is that it's the fact that a Blackmagic camera, when using the HDMI out, will no longer record Apple ProRes at the same time. So the 6K will only do BRAW. Otherwise, that's a little weird glitch, as if you're doing that. So anyway, that's a little inside baseball for you between Chris and I. So anyway, so go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, Dropbox won't handle them either, so you can't preview on Dropbox.
Yeah,
which is
yeah. But what I will say is that I've spent a lot of years on Dropbox and G Drive and a lot of other things, and Frame.io just makes it so much easier. Just so much easier to manage teams, so much easier to manage folders, so much easier. I'm literally, after the last project, I haven't gotten around to it because I have so much in Dropbox that I have to hook a drive up and just pair it so that I can sit there for a couple of days and pull everything off of it. But as soon as I have that done with Dropbox, I'm done. I'm not putting anything else up there. And you have different tiers. You can have archive inside of Frame.io that you pay a lower amount for, and then you have your work stuff that you're paying a higher amount for. Go ahead, Chris.
The other thing, and I literally just learned this a couple of days ago, there's a utility that they have called Frame.io Transfer. You have to go to the website to download it. And the beauty of it is that if you are onboarding a new person and you have put a bunch of assets and folders and whatnot there, the Frame.io Transfer allows you to suck down the entire folder structure. And it does it in a very robust way, much more robust than even the browser. And the browser is actually really good. What was interesting, when I went to learn more about it, I did a little search on the YouTube, and about 4 icons down was my face. And apparently I had done an interview with Emery Wells and didn't pay enough attention. There was a whole interview with Emery explaining Frame.io Transfer. So I'm a horrible, horrible interviewer.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just as far as the archiving goes, strictly for that purpose, is that a viable option as far as archiving, or are there other services that you would recommend just for that purpose?
It'd be an expensive way to put stuff in the cloud. I mean, there's cheaper ways to keep things if you're really doing old archives, and generally keeping big archives in the cloud. I would only keep things that I absolutely thought that I would need to come back to on any cloud service. I don't really keep all the files there. That's what raw hard drives are for. But I think that would be I can definitely, I mean, in the same way that I keep stuff in Dropbox, it is nice to have stuff up there that I can send clients. One thing that I do like to do in the cloud is keep collections of commonly used assets, so logos and process, like being able to just send someone a link to a logo or to a open file or to a motion graphic that we just use all the time really is nice. Like, you can upload it, but it's really nice to just have a set of folders that you can send people to. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, if you absolutely need to archive in the cloud, and ingress and egress are an issue, which I guess is not really an archive thing. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, I think, is $7 per terabyte, and it scales, completely linearly. So that's actually cheaper than Amazon S3, assuming you've got any up and down.
Yeah, and so, but I will say that if you're working on projects with teams in the cloud, I don't think that there's anything, and I often don't look just at where companies have come or where they are, but where I think they're going. And if you look at the team at Frame.io, you can see a trajectory of success, that they're thinking of things, and it comes right from the top. Now, and I will say that I've known Emery for 15 years. And so I just know what he's like. He's more particular than I am. Like Emery is like, there's not that many people that are more particular than I am about things. Emery is one of them. And so so me knowing that Emery is the one that still at this point in the company, Emery is looking at every button. Like, I guarantee it. Like, he's looking at every button and what it feels like when you click on it and how it looks and everything else. That the companies, I know, I was sitting in Frame.io's office a couple of years ago talking to Emery about it. And he was like, when I walked in, he was like reviewing the way a window opened. Like, he was complaining to the programmers that it didn't feel this way this is the CEO of the company, the founder, sitting there just like, it's not like a business to him that he's not like a guy who has an MBA. He was one of us, or is one of us, right? And he happens to have this big company, and he picks at things that are just like, I don't know if it just, and that's an entirely different process, of to have that from the top. It's like a Steve Jobs, but for collaborative. So I see the trajectory of Frame.io as being the one that we want to follow. Andy has made it into the crew. He's getting himself set up. Do we have, while he's finishing his setup, Bill, do we have any last questions?
Yeah, we have one simple one, and then we have one that's way too complex, so maybe you want to hold it until the tail end of the show. It's one of those explain the universe in 25 words or less and why questions. So the last regular question, Mike Burns here in the panel from Spokane says, what's the deal with the Mukana links? Do they expire? Inquiring minds want to know.
Mukana gets reset each day right now. So it won't always be that way, but it's not that they expire. We just reset the system. It's the same event. So reset over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
so,
but Alex, sometimes they still work. Like, sometimes I could be gone for days and I click on it and they still work.
Well, the Mukana link itself will work. The links in the chat will be reset. But yeah, Mukana, the Mukana link, I think it's only been maybe reset once or changed once. Guy, and then Roscoe, and Mickey.
Yeah, I think Sky's the one that's still doing the archive, and to me, that's what's important is to throw those links in there because, like yesterday, TJ had some cool music that I couldn't type out really fast because I was co-hosting, and it's great to have that archive to go back even a month later and check through them. So thank you, Sky, for handling those. Is that what you were talking about, Mike? Is the ability to go back later?
No, well, yeah. So when I say links, I don't mean like the chat links. I mean the link to Mukana if I just want to launch it and take a look at it and see what I missed, the last day or two. Sometimes it just doesn't load, and I'm not quite sure if they expire or not.
No, it should work directly. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Mickey.
The same thing is, the chat links are in the Discord. They're very useful. So a lot of the stuff from Mukana gets stored. And sometimes Safari, if you don't reset the browser or whatever, you just click on the page, it'll actually show you a cached page. And so you can click on links that are just hanging out in Safari, but it refreshes right away.
Mickey, did you have anything else?
Yeah, the link for Mukana, like it should be the same every single day. It does get reset, as Alex mentioned, but you should be able to just bookmark it and go there every day.
I do the same. I go to the same one every day. Both of them, the internal and external. Let's go to the next question. What's the question of the world? Andy, are you ready? Or are you still working? Oh, you can just text me. Oh, you can't hear anything yet. Andy's having trouble hearing us.
Okay.
So
well, it's really not that deep. The question is, can you talk about, this is from Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois. Can you talk about who does what on the panel and spend a minute or two to go into detail? Note, I mean what you do for the production of office hours, not what you do in real life necessarily. So I just thought with this number of people in the panel, even a minute or two is going to take a long time.
Well, is the question about what different people do in the panel, like as part of office hours or part of?
Yeah, he means production, like who does what in the background.
Oh, yeah, we've done that in the past. We should probably do it again. We could do it again, but not today. Yeah, maybe that'll be one of our end of year. Maybe I'll look at one of that as one of the end of year hours.
It's for the production of office hours, meaning that, somebody's running the chat, somebody's,
Oh, in relationship to that, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I'm running the conversation as best I can. We usually break questions between Bill, Chris, and Phil, and Guy are the kind of the four right now that have. One of them is doing a question, and the reason that we do that specifically is because it makes it easier for me to focus. Like it means that somebody else is managing that machine and able to be ready for it and dealing with any of those things. And so, or whoever the host is, we always want the host to be the host and someone else managing the question so they can think about it. The only time we change that is on Sundays. Mickey does editing; he cuts the show for what you're watching, and so he's pushing that around, and he also does the stream. So Mickey manages the stream to Mukana. So if you hit the play button on Mukana and you get the audio, that's that little screen that's the second one back behind Mickey's head, and so Mickey does both of those things. There is a handful of us that are managing. You'll see me kind of make a couple people co-host. It just means that if we had any issues with Zoom bombs or anything else, we'd be able to sort it out. But also just have a couple people able to help people in and out. Hold on, I'm just talking to, let's see. Built-in speakers. Okay. 1 second here.
Andy, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
Oops. I guess that's a no.
Negative on that.
You may want to hold on. Yeah, he's having trouble hearing. Hold on.
Well, one question maybe Bill can answer about the previous question is if you're given the task of reading the questions, does it require a different interface for Mukana that allows you to cut and paste which version you're using, cut and paste the questions over?
There's a back end version that we'll eventually make available to everyone. There's a back end that kind of manages all the questions. So it's not cutting and pasting anything. That's exactly what we're trying to not do. So it kind of manages questions. You can drag them around and stuff like that, so that you can make it all work there. And we just haven't been ready to show that externally. So there's just a handful of people that have been cleared for that.
Andy looked like he was trying to talk, but he is muted in Zoom.
Yeah, Andy, unmute yourself in Zoom. Can we ask him to? Oh, let's see here. There we go. Can you talk, Andy?
There we go.
Almost there. And you're unmuted now in Zoom.
Hello.
We hear you. Can you hear us?
Hello, Andy. Can you hear me? Sounds like not.
Hold on.
This is a
So we've got
particularly
half of it.
annoying bug in Mac OS. Sometimes if you've got multiple sound cards, it just gets goofy.
You've got the send part of the equation working, but not the receive part of the equation, which makes it difficult.
I'll do my best to sign it. How's that?
Yeah.
Good.
And on
Can
the
you hear
last
us?
topic,
Let us
not
know
to
if
go
you can
too
hear
far.
us, Andy. Let us know
Oh.
if that works. It's actually one of the reasons that I still just plug right into the headphone jack of my computer is because I never want to have that pipeline. So I happen to be listening right now through my USB pre because that one is dip switches. But anything with software, I tend to have my earpiece always connected to as little tech as possible so I can hear what's going on. But I've been in Andy's shoes before, so and we'll just see if he can hear us.
Yeah, and just to advance a little farther on the last question without going into depth and detail, you'll notice we mentioned people like Sky doing something for the Discord, and everybody here on the panel and most of the people watching, I think, know that there's an interaction between what we do here on the show and the Discord for office hours that is pretty robust. So
and then
a
also,
lot of what we talk about, yeah, go ahead.
And even all the way down to Chad puts in this reminder inside of Chad puts inside of the chat here to tell people where to go to Mukana. It may seem like a little thing, but it's super important to actually let people know where it's going. And because there's no way for us to, if you come in after he posts that, there's no way to do it. And then Jeffrey is putting together the notes inside of YouTube, and which is the key to there's so many people that have told me that they're using those shortcuts. So he's putting there, that's what it looks like when he puts it through there. And so that's, he's putting those together in YouTube all the time and making that work for us. And so it is, like when you think about doing your own event, even on a little event like this that we're doing every day, that's relatively informal, it's like a little team, like that's all kind of working through that. And when I have production, Bill or Chris or Phil are jumping in and helping host it. And the only way we've been able to get through this every day for 8 months is because of the team, of making that work. And again, to Bill's point, Discord was something that I was a little resistant to at first. I was like, oh, it's gonna be one more thing to manage. And that was really Phil and Chad and a couple other folks working on like, hey, we've got an idea, we can put it together. And they really made that happen. And so it really has been an incredible team effort. And then of course the panel itself is the team as well. Now go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and just to add, Chad, every time we do mic checks, Chad gives us a nice reminder. Okay, we have 52 seconds per panelist we have, and that helps so much with okay, I need to speed things up. And then also we have TJ who sometimes subs in with sending the meters and also sending out to Mukana, the broadcast out to Mukana. And then we also have Stuart and also Beiju sometimes cuts the show when I'm unable to come in. So yeah, huge team that's just really well supports each other.
With that old phrase, we eat our own dog food. That's what Alex has been preaching to us. Have backups upon backups if you're doing a live show. So if one thing fails, you cascade to number 2 and then the third tertiary backup. And we do practice that pretty well here. And I think that's one of the reasons we've not really had a tech failure that I can remember on the overall show in all 8 months of doing this. I mean, I don't think the show has ever failed to go out.
Okay, it's good. And you guys can take the signs down. Andy can hear me. I'm texting Andy. You don't have to ask him.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, all right, Andy, you can hear us and see us now.
I've been able to see you all this time. I can now hear you because I've gone through the incredibly high-tech thing of putting a copper wire from my ears into the actual computer.
Yep. Technology. It's amazing.
Air gap.
See, this is why I will, from the time I started doing these kind of shows to 5 seconds ago, my mantra has always been, you start a Catholic mass by saying the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. You start a web chat by saying, God damn it.
Oh.
You've been Skype. Only in this case, it's not Skype.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and the funny thing is that what often gets you,
what often catches you is I was like, well, Andy, I didn't do my standard, hey, we have to have a meeting beforehand and we have to do a bunch of test calls and everything else. Cause I was like, oh, Andy does this on thing. But I realized when you're having trouble, I was like, oh, he does it on Skype. It's like it's like a whole different
No. See, this is why, like, I do Zoom plenty of times now. Everything was working fine just yesterday.
Oh, right.
And so the whole point of having the reason why you see this backdrop behind me is because behind me you see my actual desk with my actual computer, things that I actually screw around with. The whole point of having like this whole second setup here is that nothing gets touched. The only thing that gets changed from one setup to another is that this gets new ice and new soda. And that's pretty much it. So the idea being that like I can be like behind the screen doing whatever needs I need to do. Okay, got 5 minutes to go. Great, no problem. I'll just go to the other side of the scrim. And I don't know why these things happen, but these things do happen. Yeah. So but you are absolutely right. It does feel like at sometimes you don't necessarily need to have like let's have a pre-meeting and then let's have a confab before the pre-meeting. Sometimes you feel like you don't need that, but there is you are realizing that so long as you're doing anything more complicated, that I'm going to create a copper highway between the actual computer and your ears. Anything more complicated than that, even involving USB, it's like, how about 5 minutes beforehand I make sure everything is working. So
no, absolutely.
I apologize for not being being ready.
It's great having you, Andy. And for everyone, I can tell you the story of the first time Andy and I didn't meet, because it was, so I just remember we were in it was Macworld, and I think I was covering something. This probably would have been 2000, or it might have been even in 1990 something or other, but early 2000s. And I remember walking towards, it was the Blondie's Pizzas right at the end of the cable car. And I was walking towards there and I saw Andy Ihnatko and I went, I should go over and say hi to him. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a fanboy. I don't want to be a fanboy. I don't want to just be that guy like, hi. Because I was like, I won't have anything to say. I don't have any questions right now. I don't know what to say to him. It's Andy Ihnatko though. And so I always remember that because Andy has just become a really good friend, and we just love hanging out with each other. If we're in, and I think that people, because we're like the wolf dog and the wolf, on Mac Break, that you saw in the old cartoons, because we sit there and argue a lot on Mac Break about things. And so we argue about points on camera. And so people have an impression, because people always go, oh, you and Andy, I mean, how do you even put up with each other? And I'm like, we're like best friends. Like we love hanging out with each other. Like if we're in the same city at the same time, we're almost guaranteed to be having a dinner or more, just hanging out and talking. And there's very few people I enjoy just hanging out with than Andy. So
no, absolutely. This is sort of, there are very few people for whom I do a lot of podcasts and stuff with friends. There are very few people that like we're so simpatico where it's like, now I almost have a post-it note saying now remember what you're saying, the conversation you're saying, there are other people in the conversation. Make sure that they get to come in to the conversation. Yeah. Make sure that you don't get off on this tangent that's going to last for like 45 minutes of just you two having a conversation, forgetting that, oh, that's right. Apple just got bought out by Disney. We're supposed to be talking about that right now. It was the most unfair. Really, it was almost unfair, because there's a couple of times like we've done like Mac Break, where like last time you were in my town, like, so basically you came to my place, we hung out, and so we were at the same table together, and it was almost unfair to like the other two people, because you know how it's like the worst part of trying to do any kind of a show where there are lots of people in lots of different locations is when a couple of them are in the same location, because they can have a normal conversation where they're playing off each other. They see all the social.
We have a lot of conversations. We have a lot of conversations about that here. It's called hybrid events. Yeah. And we talk about how they don't really work.
Yeah.
But and so it's such a pleasure to have you here. And I know that Andy and I can just literally sit and just talk the whole time. Right. But I know we have a bunch of questions that people have stacked up. They when they found out Andy's here, we've got a slew of questions lined up for you, Andy. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into them. let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and ask some of them, and we'll go from there. So James Babbitt asks, "Hi Andy, where online could we view your photography?"
Used to be Flickr, but I've actually moved a lot of my photography over to Instagram, where the price of admission is you have to spell my last name, Ihnatko, only because it's Instagram has become a lot more fun, because with Flickr, this is the photography website. So that makes sure that I want to make sure that I've got my histograms correct so that it'll be viewed properly. And what color profile am I doing? And with Instagram, though, it's like, ooh, that's kind of a cool picture. I think I'll tweak a little and put it up on Instagram. So I keep meaning to put more stuff back on Flickr. It really has become a little bit of a ghost town, even though I'm glad that they got bought out. And they're still an active concern. But yeah, obviously I haven't been doing as much as I used to since lockdown, because it's like, okay, here's a picture of this bottle cap on my desk. I hope you like it, because I decided to use a motion filter on it. But yes, thank you. So hit Instagram for that kind of cool stuff. I'm having such a fun time with Lightroom on mobile right now, that I kind of have to remember that there have been times where I have thought that, oh, gee, I kind of wish I'd like put that on the desktop so that I could have used like the real Photoshop on it, because I was just that my version of mobile gaming really is just looking through pictures I've taken on my cheap little camera on my phone, and then just tweaking it in Lightroom, because you can do so much cool stuff with it. Like what you're looking at right now. I got the new M1 MacBook Pro. And it was, oh great, I want to like say, oh wow, here I just got the MacBook Pro and I'm really excited about it. And of course it's like, okay, great, I'll just like take a quick snapshot of it before like I break the seal and unbox it, and then, but it's like, oh well, gee, let's go into again, just on my phone. It's like, let's go into Lightroom Pro, and like, well, it's what if I just make sure that there's like more light on the label than anything else. Actually, you know, it'd be cool if I do like sort of a color fade on the top and the bottom.
Exactly.
So yeah, like I said, that's why I never get into mobile gaming, because every time that I'm just like screwing around and having fun on the phone, it's usually, ooh, that's right, I was waiting for a train and I took a picture of that bird like 4 months ago. Well, how come I never did anything with that picture?
And I have a slightly different question. What are you still using the Brio as the web camera?
Yep.
Like I'm looking at it because our account got updated to 1080p, and it looks stunningly good. Like it looks really, really good.
See, that's one of the reasons why I upgraded to I didn't wait for a second generation hardware. My previous like broadcasting station computer was a 2012 Mac Mini, which was doing great up until a point. And then last year, actually even before the pandemic, I decided that it was time to start upgrading some of my video hardware. I wasn't ready to spend like $1,000 on upgrading my interchangeable lens camera so that I could use it as a webcam or anything like that. But hey, wow, the Brio, it's a 4K. Not it wasn't just that it was 4K. It was that it was 4K, but the controller software would let me get some more distance on the camera and use like a digital zoom, but still have full HD and stuff like that. And but I found out that my old Mac Mini absolutely could not handle the idea of even like streaming it down to 1080 for the purpose of streaming. So I was getting like much lower resolution than I was getting on the old like 920. So that really hit home for me that it was time for me to perhaps make some.
So what is this? What computer are you connected to here?
This is the 2020 M1 Apple Silicon based MacBook Pro.
Yeah, because it just jumps out. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm going through the exact same thing that that networks are going through in 1990, where I realized that, oh well, I did shave yesterday morning. I didn't think it was okay. I didn't need to shave, but yeah, now I do make sure. I feel unfortunately my lighting is good enough that's like, ew, I need one of those like I need one of those like whatever they use for Katie Lee Griffith in the morning. I need a little bit of
airbrush.
Thank you very much for your question.
Now, Jason Bach asks, what's the best single thing print media can do to stay in business aside from firing insanely talented journalists, of course?
I think they need to move a little bit more toward, they need to find a hybrid between the sort of community-based journalism that they need to do, boots on the ground, people inside every single local committee meeting. They need to have that kind of hyper local stuff that they can do, that everybody absolutely needs. This is part of their public service. People, it's the sort of stuff that no citizen journalist is interested in doing is the kind of journalism where it literally is, you have to have someone inside every single committee meeting. Just as the saying goes, that there's a reason why every time the presidential helicopter takes off or lands, there's somebody there just in case something happens. Anytime that the president, or anytime that the president might be shouting something as he's walking from one place to another, you have someone there just in case. You need to have someone at every committee meeting. You also need to have somebody who's willing to go through folders after folders, box after box of documents. That's the sort of local stuff that every single that's the best piece of community contribution that every local journalist actually does.
It's what we should do, but how do we pay for it? Like, how do we? What's the business model, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I really don't know. I've been asked this question a couple times, oftentimes when I'm talking on NPR, and all I can say is that you have to make sure that you don't have a business model that's based on print advertising ever really coming back. I think that a lot of it is a lot of my thoughts on this come around to the Edison Carter model, where like from the old Max Headroom, the old Max Headroom show, where you have journalists coming out, they have the ability to post directly, they have the ability, you have to have the pipeline where journalists are part of the editorial pipeline. You're working together as a community of journalists inside your paper, inside your organization, but you also need to have the ability to some sort of an outlet, some sort of a pipeline, so that if I just want to post something, I can just post it. That was one of the things that led to like my rift between myself and the Sun Times, because they're a great organization, but they were having a hard time figuring out that, well, the thing is, I wrote this, there was this really great breaking story, or at least from a tech perspective, and I really busted my butt to get my facts in line, so that something that I found out about at 11 and confirmed at 1, and then was able to get something written by 1:30, and I put it in your hands at 1:45, and now it's 2 days later and it still hasn't been edited and posted. That kind of like that, I feel kind of minus by that. So that's it really has to be a total reinvention of the newsroom. Some organizations are doing that. Unfortunately, they're the ones that have the sort of financial firepower that they're not really going on a quarter by quarter budget that they can simply, yeah.
And the hard part is kind of a hard turn, right? It's a they're now, this gets into that whole, your retirement fund should start when you're 20 or when you're 30 or whatever. And a lot of us don't, but the main thing is that now you have, where if they had started in 2000 or 2005, leveraging their following into other platforms and other things, for the ones that did that, New York Times, I think, is an example of, has done a pretty good job of that. Yeah. As far as revenue goes, they've been able to make that transition. For the ones that said, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, that turn has become death-defying. The corner that they have to turn. Jason, real quick, and then we're going to move on.
So if I were to summarize that, do you mean just pre-screened people that are staff writers, for example, can post, like let them post?
Pretty much. I think that there should be kind of like how on Twitter there's that little blue badge that isn't supposed to mean you've been verified. You're part of the holy of holies, but people tend to think that that's it. Not only that, but there should be sort of that kind of a badge on certain content that says, oh, by the way, this has not gone. This is more like the super digital editorial page. This has not been vetted by by editorial. This has not been gone through fact checking or even copywriters, excuse me, copy editors. That's something that's a bummer. Don't complain when you see, oh my God, can't believe this person has so many typos and they've actually published it. It's like, dude, do you realize that like when I started, there were like, I had 2 copy editors working on my stuff and making, and as soon as I would file something, I would say, Andy, you seem to have the first 4 words of a sentence here, but not the last 5 that actually makes it mean something. Like, ooh, sorry, that's right. I was typing real fast. And by the end, it was like my the editor who was working on my stuff was also like working on like 18 other things, and was like really hard to get things done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's hard to get ideas out and have it clean at the same time. Brett Dickus said, Andy, thank you for being you. He said, how has tech journalism evolved in 2020? So during the pandemic.
I don't know if it's evolved very quickly in the past less than a year. The big difference is that it's showing some of the cracks that have not been talked about before. Biggest example being that a lot of tech journalists bring their own experience at the expense of a broader perspective. So that if I make a comment about how, oh, well, here's the best camera that if you're starting to do Zoom calls from home, here's exactly the setup that you should have. And I'm saying, okay, well, let's say that I have 3 kids and I don't want to spend $600, $700 on a Zoom on a Mix Pre 3 audio adapter. And actually, most of their questions are going to be along the lines of, I've got 2 different kids in 2 different classes and only one room in which they can both do their classes in. How do I make sure that when one of them is screaming, it's not affecting their other classes? How do I make sure that I have enough bandwidth that they can connect reasonably? I'm worried that now I suddenly have to have all these extra accounts with all these extra companies, and now all my kids now have identities on these different services that I can't really monitor. There's the trick of feeling as though, oh well, we're the experts here, we know all about technology, don't worry, it's going to be all right, we're going to tell you exactly what to do. Unfortunately, all forms of journalism, the first step is always humility and getting rid of ego and saying, I need to look at the world through eyes that I have never really looked through before. What perspective am I not dealing with before? And the same goes for, and that's just the simpler form of recommending how people can do Zoom calls and work from home. When you go into things like, why should I be really worried about what the EU is doing for regulating large companies? Why should why are 48 different states attorney generals doing a widespread collaborative investigation into big tech right now? Is that going to affect my ability to get my iPhone updated? It all starts with humility, and when you're not out there, when you're not integrating with other people, it makes it very, very easy to, again, get into the, oh well, I'm here in my seat of power, I'm here to dispense wisdom from this wonderful little keyboard, aren't you lucky to have that happen. I'm hoping that if there's a really positive effect, it's leading more people to realize that I didn't have to. I have a point of view that's not being reflected by anybody else. My biggest dream is to have the person who really is just a parent, if there is such a thing as just a parent, who's felt as though they've learned so much by just trying to manage computers that have to support their home career, their 2 children, their college child that is now like decided to, because they can't live on campus anymore, is now moving back in. Now they are looking at areas of tech that they didn't think about before, and if this expands to the point where they're so aware of the larger questions of this digital world around them that, hey, wow, I've because I'm now spending 12 hours a day behind the keyboard, I've just a lot of people on social media that I follow are talking about Dr. Geberu being fired from Google. What's that all about? And then realizing that, oh, it's because there is this really huge cultural cancer inside Google that the company's having a very, very hard time figuring out how to solve. That I now have the power as, again, a parent of 3 to I'm going to talk to my people about it, and I'm going to have a blog post, or at least I'm going to go onto social media about it. Journalism is everywhere. I'm the sort of person who really enjoys spending months on something at the outset, or writing 1,000 words, 2,000 words about it. But journalism is also, here's what I'm observing, and then sharing that point of view with people. And that can be done through Twitter. That can be done through Instagram. And the more points of view, the more hands-on keyboards we get, the better understanding we have of an issue. So that's how I hope that journalism is being expanded, by getting more people into the conversation.
I often talk about photogrammetry and how it relates to journalism, in the sense that the way we get an object is you take pictures from a lot of different angles of that object, and then they have to be overlapping by 50-60%, but not from the same position. And you keep on doing that until you get the whole picture. And I think that until you do that from all those different backgrounds, you can't get the whole picture, and I think that and Twitter, and like we do an education talk on Saturdays, and you have administrators and teachers and deans and all kinds of other stuff all talking about it, and all of them get to share their back and forth information, their experience of what education looks like, and I think that it has greatly expanded, how I view it as well. Thomas Bear asks, this is an important question, Andy, so I need you to be ready for it.
Okay, I will caffeinate.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be a difficult question, I think, but I think one we have to address is, how are the squirrels coping with 2020?
I hope they're good. We're trying to help each other. I sent a letter out to the usual mail list for the squirrels saying, I know that we haven't been around quite a while. It's not you. It's not anything you've done. We're going through this thing. And
you're going to have to go find your own acorns. We're not bringing you your peanuts on their own. Those the little peanuts that have a little sugar on them, those the ones that they have in Boston Commons.
No, well, again, I just don't want them to think that, hey, Carl mouthed off, and Carl who realizes that, look, if you just sit and wait, they will feed you. You don't have to climb up the pant leg and try to get into the bag of peanuts. Dudes, people, it's not about Carl. I know you're always, every time something goes wrong, you try to scapegoat Carl about this.
Yeah.
It's just our thing. We will be back. We love this. We love this. We love you and everything we do. We want to support you and everything we do. We miss you as much as you miss at least the proteins that we provide you. But yeah, I miss that a lot. There's also it's no longer necessary for me to test out a phone by going to the Boston Public Library with 5 different phones and taking the same shot from the same standard 12 test shots, just to do a side by side stuff. But still, I understand more about how well a phone camera works by doing those test shots. And part of that test suite is going into the public garden and taking pictures of squirrels, mostly because I don't have a little kid, so I need to test out how fast is the autofocus, how fast how good is the interface, so that when I'm dealing with a little creature that's just hold still. Nana wants a picture. If you hold still for 5 freaking seconds, we can move on from this. Squirrels also are also very jittery, will not pay attention to your commands, but may stay still if you actually give them food. So give them snacks. So that's a good analog. So yeah, I really do miss taking those pictures.
A lot of fun. Thomas Bear also asks, Andy, please discuss your writing philosophy of quality over speed to print. How much does that translate to radio podcasts?
Boy, it's really hard to find an overlap between that, because just now I have to speak extemporaneously, and I've been writing since I was 18 or 19, which means that I kind of learned how to write professionally by using journalistic techniques, and that's always about double checking and triple checking your facts to make sure by the time you say something, if I state something that is a fact, how do I know this is a fact? Also, even if I have an opinion, I need to, my philosophy has always been, I want to attack that opinion from so many angles so that to the point where I'm entitled to arrogance about it. so to speak.
Yeah.
My goal is that if I say that, wow, this is the Pixel 4a, and it's a $350 phone, and really most people will do just fine with this. The era of the $800, you need to have a reason to spend $800 for a phone nowadays, because the baseline products are just so good and so well made. I have to anticipate every jerk or every informed opinion that's going to be against that. That says, oh, you're so wrong. I can't believe you didn't even think about that. I want them. My response to that, if I were responding to that online, would be, well, that's a good point, but here's blah 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 blah.
Right.
I want to be able to say, okay, well, I know you're saying that many people are going to require more storage than that. That is exactly what I said in paragraph 3, sentence number 4. If you would care to read it, but I see that you didn't. And so that's a sort of care and caution. My problem whenever I'm doing stuff like this, especially something that's a live Q&A than this, is that, so I've programmed my brain to, if you were to ask me, what's your mother's first name, I would say, oh, well, obviously it's, yeah, okay, I know I think that it's that, but let me just do a search quickly and let me just double check that before I actually go out and tell. I respond to that as a fact. So it's just last night doing a podcast, I knew that one of the stories that I was talking about was Google announcing that they were going to be delaying the reopening of their official campuses for another 2 months. They were reopening in September, and it was like, that's what I remember. And I know that this news just came out yesterday, and I've been like writing about it and thinking about it, but let's just pause the recording just to make sure that I'm absolutely sure that it's in September. I think that I'm sorry, I just realized I might have been talking around the answer instead of giving you the answer. We all have things that, as writers, as thinkers, as doers, that we do really well, that actually moves us as creators. I'm not, there are people in my business that they're really, really moved by, hey, here's a breaking story that we don't have all the information yet. We don't have the context of this information. All I can tell you is that here is something that someone tweeted out about something that is breaking right now. We will have more details as we go along. And that's the adrenaline rush. And that's the, people need to be aware that this thing is going down, even though we don't know what's going on right now. I'm more interested in there's a question that is really interesting about this. The answer is out there somewhere. I really, really want to find it. And I want to publish when I can really when I feel as though I've created, a heartbreaking moment of truth, beauty, and wisdom, so to speak. That's what moves me. And so a few years ago when I did, actually, this was back in 2013, when I lost my friend Roger Ebert died, it's not as though his loss didn't send me into a tailspin, but it was a good moment to say, I'm going to do some rethinking of a lot of the things that I'm doing with my career and the way that I do my work. What is it that you really, really enjoy about this? And what I do enjoy is, again, talking about something as simple as reviewing a phone. I get a lot more pleasure out of spending a month or two and feeling as though this is going to be something I can stand behind for the next year as people are thinking about getting opinions about this, as opposed to I need to get something out on release day.
It's actually one of the reasons that I stopped doing reviews flat out. And I just said, I'll recommend it if I like it, and I won't talk about it otherwise, because I never felt like it was fair. Like, I just felt like giving it to me for 3 days or a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I need to play with it and see if it becomes part of what I'm doing, or I should just not, I don't want to talk bad about it and say, oh, this isn't very good, because I don't know. It's just not good for me. And so the idea is that's why, when in early Mac breaks, I wanted to move to we recommend this, but we don't, but it's a pick. We don't review things. Although Leo has shut me down a couple times when wanting to create what I call Apple wine. We just get to whine about Apple things, but maybe someday. Speaking of that, James Babbitt.
One quick button on that though is that the other big problem there is that I really do think that corporate PR and corporate marketing is taking way much to influence over how products are reviewed, how these things are investigated, because it really does. I have lost my taste for this idea that, wow, suddenly there are 12 reviews of the new AirPods Max. That's because, of course, there was an NDA, and of course people got early access to hardware if they agree not to talk about it until this time on this day. So all the reviews come out together, coincidentally a time when Apple is looking for as much PR as possible to get people to make sure that this will have as much of the tech news cycle as possible. And I'm like, it's not a bad thing. I don't think that people are being bought off by any means, but I do think that is giving way too much control and way too much power to the company that's making this stuff. I would much rather say that, well, thank you very much for this product loan. I will publish at a time and a date when I feel is convenient for me and that I can do the best for my users. I'm sorry if this is not convenient for your for your marketing cycle, but that's not the job that we're in right now. Thank you very much.
Now, a quick note to everyone: there's more questions than we have time. So
I'm sorry, I'll try to be shorter.
No. I'm just letting everybody else know it's super important that you vote on the questions. So there's questions. There's a voting mechanism there that you had in there. So make sure to vote the questions up that are the most important to you, because as you can see, Andy's going to give a full answer to a lot of these questions, and you just want to make sure that your questions get to the top. So there's a lot of pressure there, and we might be able to persuade Andy to come back and do more Q&A with us.
I think this has been fun. I will say the only thing that I'm intimidated by is that, as you might have noticed, I've been adjusting like my video as I go, because even just the thumbnails at the top of my window, like, ooh, my white balance is not, my flesh tones are not nearly as good as everybody else's in this chat. I wonder if I can just
you're doing really well. We always warn people when they come on, like, this is not like a normal panel that you would normally see. There's a little bit more, it's a little deeper than that. So you just, but you're actually one of the few people that have come up that I would say that is keeping up, like it, or even better. I mean, I just think the camera looks so good. That's why I had to ask you. I was like, is he still using that Brio? Because it looks like broadcast. All right. It's, look at that. I mean, someone just spot.
Yeah, when Alex need a haircut, asks, it's a sign.
Sorry.
I also need a haircut. Dang, damn it.
Yeah. James Babbitt asks, how did you meet Leo Laporte?
Actually, I met him. I met him in real space on a cruise ship. For a time, there was an organization that were doing these things that they were calling geek cruises, where it was such a wonderful scam for everybody involved. Where if your company like said, okay, here's you need to get trained on this. And so here you got a training budget of $3,000. Just get training and make sure by the time you come back you could run the server, or how to manage this workflow or whatever. And so some guy came up with this really great idea, saying, "Gee, what if when on a cruise ship, like you have a really great time in the ports, but like while you're at sea, you're just like at sea. So what if we did training while people were at sea, and they could spend like their $5,000 training budget on a cruise to like the Western Caribbean or around Hawaii?" And so it was such a great scam for everybody, because the trainees got a free cruise at company expense while they were learning how to do whatever they needed to do, and people like me got a free cruise just to speak for like 4 or 5 hours, just to teach a couple of classes. And so Leo was like one of the guests / speakers on one of these cruises. He had to do Mac Break on a cruise ship. And so I was one of the guest panelists, because again, I was a live body who was on the cruise ship. And as happens on every single show, people who are watching know about this, that you have a regular panel, but sometimes someone can't show up. And so they said, "Oh, Andy, you want to guest this week?" And this week became like this other week, and then this other week. And then I found myself doing this regularly. Leo is great. He really is one of these people that kind of reminds me that, wow, is you can really get things done if you realize there's an opportunity of a new technology early and you just go all in on it. So yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Burns asks, Andy, if you and Leo and Alex are the Mac gurus to the world, who is your tech guy when you get stuck with something?
I don't have one tech person. I have what I call I have a seeing eye geeks, or seeing eye nerds. I get, for lots of different topics, like when it comes to computer vision, I know someone, and that person will walk me through why NVIDIA putting ray tracing on the hardware is a big deal, and here at what point are they overstating this. I've had to get a lot more seeing eye geeks for legal stuff and for policy, because I've been doing a lot more writing about policy over the past 5 or 10 years. So I now know a lot more lawyers. I know a lot more people in Washington in DC than I used to, because I'm like, okay, this council member, is she kind of, does she, why is she so really upset about this one thing, and do we need to be afraid that we're going to be deregulated out of business? And they will be able to tell me, no, this is when this council person says this, they're not speaking to you, they're speaking to someone else in another part of government, signaling them that perhaps they want to push this part of this operation forward to the next step. So yeah, I don't have any one particular guru. I do have, that's another area in which ego really has to be tamped down. There are so many times where it's like, I can't go on Twitter and ask how come I can't get Zoom to recognize my Mix Pre 3 audio, because I'm standing here like an idiot. And yeah, you don't want to look like an idiot, but then again, you don't want to be wrong. So you have to you have to tamp down the ego.
Next question is from Jeff Francis. He said, Andy, you get to see your dream opera at the Met. What are you seeing? Where is your seat? And who is singing the lead role or roles?
Ooh, that's a really hard one. Okay, best seat would probably be in first balcony. You want to have some elevation so that you can see the full depth of the stage. The Met, the production they go all the way from the front of the stage to the back of the stage. It is amazing. You want to be in the center for exactly the same reason, so you can see exactly the right picture. Sound is going to be good pretty much wherever you go, so that's fine. Now, in terms of who is, I don't know. Either Handel or any bel canto role. I would probably choose an opera specifically because I would want to really just pack the bench with as much firepower as I want. I would want probably Norma, because I could get Joyce DiDonato in the lead role. Stephanie Blythe, I would want Alice Coote up there. I do have favorite like tenors and baritones, but they're the ones that I have to like Google to make sure I remember what their names are. But yeah, I was really pleased. I saw Cendrillon a couple of years ago, and specifically because Joyce DiDonato was singing the lead role, and this is one of the roles that she has really like made this part of her career of. But that was also where I got introduced to Stephanie Blythe, who is another mezzo, but she just has this amazing just canon of a voice that she can go from and it's amazing because she can do these Wagnerian dramatic roles, but also she's on Instagram with her blue ukulele, just doing these sweet like Tin Pan Alley songs that are wonderful. She's doing a Christmas song, she's doing a Christmas program on Friday, as a matter of fact, tomorrow night, that I really encourage everybody to Google for it. Her name is Stephanie Blythe, Blythe. She will do it both as Stephanie Blythe and also as her drag act, which is Blithely Oratonio, which is she puts on a beard and this big wig, and she sits on a throne and talks about her career as a tenor, and talking about opera, talking about creativity, singing these amazing like tenor rock songs. But yeah, I would basically be packing the bench with, I would find whatever it is that has enough soprano and mezzo roles, enough baritone. As a baritone myself, I tend to like I tend to be more interested in baritones than in tenors. Tenors are dopey. I'm in love because I'm a tenor. I'm gonna be doing stupid things and be easily manipulated. Whereas the baritones are, what a stupid baritone. I can easily manipulate him. I'm far more interesting, though I'll probably be killed at the end. But you'll remember my death scene forever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Rachel Ann Clifton said, "Oh, Andy, it's such a pleasure to have you on Office Hours. Following your theater trips, how in the world did you discover opera? Thank you."
YouTube. Diana Damrau's performance as the Queen of the Night in the Magic Flute became one of these videos that just becomes like a not a Gundam style viral hit, but enough that it kind of surfaces up. And if you ever see this clip, is from the Royal Opera House production 2006, where it was just this breakthrough moment for me, because the public perception of opera is always this people in like 17th century clothes, you know, in this 17th century sets going da 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 da. It's not accessible. And then when you see this performance of the costumes are amazing, the sets are incredible, and when you have this song that I've always, there's a lot of opera music that is part of the soundtrack of culture. Like, okay, you hear this, you've heard Nessun Dorma, you've heard like these early Act One songs from La Traviata in the spaghetti sauce commercial. You don't know that. Okay, you think that. Oh, isn't that nice? Oh, that's what a pretty song. Because from the Amadeus soundtracks, that was part of it was actually one of my mixtapes as a kid, just because I thought it was a really pretty song. Say, okay, let me tell you what's going on here. Right. This is the Queen of the Night, who has been trying to get her daughter, who's been kidnapped, trying to get her rescued from her arch nemesis. Her arch nemesis, by the way, has been denigrating her as a woman from the very, very start. Stolen all of her items of power that should have gone to her after her husband died. And this idiot, this jerk, decided to kidnap her daughter because, oh, you're just a foolish emotional woman. You should just, like, you know, let us take care of her, because you can't be trusted with her. You can't be trusted with these items of power. So they kidnapped her. And so, getting back to dopey tenors, so because she doesn't have the power to confront this person directly, sent a dopey tenor in to rescue her. And so the dopey tenor fell in with, like, the guy who kidnapped her, and her daughter fell in love with the dopey tenor. And after she's found out exactly how badly things gone, this aria, when you're singing it improperly, is like, what she is singing is, okay, you've really let me down, daughter. And here's what's going to happen. Here is a big knife. You are going to personally murder my enemy. And if you don't, the full fury of a mother's rage is going to fall down upon your head. And the way that this aria is presented by the Royal Opera House, that it's like, you feel, not only does Diana Damrau sing this with the full fury of the emotion and the moment, but also the staging of it is, you see this girl like, oh my God, this is wrong, this is so wrong, you feel really, really like, oh my God, I don't know who that woman is, but I don't want to piss her off. I'll tell you what, give me the sword, I'll kill the guy, I'll kill that dude if it'll make sure that I'll be on your good side. That's the sort of stuff that got me into opera. And then it's all about, it's almost like a hyperlink where who is this Diana Damrau, and then you see the other roles that she's performed, and then just like some of the best talent tends to be cast alongside the other best talent. So that's how you find out about Alice Coote and Stephanie Blythe. Kathleen Kim was another person that I actually found out about via YouTube. Opera YouTube is a real thing. So if you're curious about opera, do a whole bunch of just YouTube searches and you'll find a whole bunch of cool stuff.
That's great. And we've run to the end of the hour, and unfortunately, I have a
I'll be
meeting
back.
that I'm
I'm
already
sorry.
late for, but we're gonna have another hour. You'll come back again. We can bring.
Please, maybe next time we'll also do a speed run, a lightning round.
I don't don't think we do. I think what we need is we just need you to come often. That's all. Like I don't think there needs to be a speed round. I think that the answers are amazing and they're
and the
just fun
questions
to
are really
listen to.
great too. So
yeah, so
you hate to get the questions where no.
Yeah. Right. No, our group is not. They're pretty good at asking questions.
They're good, thoughtful questions.
They're professional question askers.
Anytime that I get to say, "Oh gosh, I know you're asking me about who's my favorite mezzo, but okay, how about my favorite coloratura, my favorite mezzo? We haven't even talked about dramatic sopranos yet." Yeah.
So thank you so much, Andy, for joining us for this hour, and we'll definitely get you back soon. You and I will talk. We'll have you come back. We'll finish the other questions.
As usual, we will talk. This was definitely worth getting up at 11 a.m. for. Let me tell you.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone else for coming. Again, this is a show that we create as a group. So if you're in the attendees, if you're a panelist, it's a show that we do together. It's not really a show that there's there's kind of a loose center, to the whole process, but we can't do it without everyone. That's the interesting thing about this show. So anyway, so we're really excited. Tomorrow we're going to talk about getting into the industry. We've talked about being a producer, being a freelancer, but how do you actually wedge your way in? There's going to be a lot of stories about how different people wedge their way into the industry and what they did to get in. So that'll be our second hour. The second hour on Saturday, as always, is focused on education. So we're going to talk about distance education and media production and education and so on and so forth. And then Sunday, we just keep talking. And we've got a great couple weeks in front of us to close out the year. So anyway, we're looking forward to seeing all of you. So until then, I will open the other meeting before I start. Andy, if you want to come in the invite, when you registered, there's a link. If you want to come in and see the rest of it, you can, but we're not, you can definitely have it here. So, but I'll open up the post show room in just a second. And for those of you who want to do that, we can.